Welcome to the Call Dad Podcast with your host, Call Dad CEO and visionary Matt Ozda, and this week's guest, Travis Roper.
All right, so Mr. Travis Roper, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, well, thank you for joining me today. So today we've got Travis Roper from our Asheville location, correct?
Yep.
Field supervisor, right?
Newly appointed field supervisor.
Yeah, congratulations on that,
Thank
by the
you.
way. So if you don't mind, I would like to get into how you ended up at Call Dad. Not necessarily Dad you yet, but taking a step further back. Did you go to school? Where did you go to school? What did you do after school? That whole thing.
Yeah, so basically, I grew up in Vermont.
Yeah.
After high school, made the cool move to run away to California. Spent about 15 years out there running restaurants.
So what years was this?
05.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got there in 05.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Graduated in, end of May, early June. August, I was in Santa Cruz, California.
Okay.
Running a restaurant.
Did you have friends that went to California, or you just always wanted to go to California?
My dad was born and raised in San Diego,
Okay.
so that area was kind of the plan.
Yeah.
I had family there, was going to do the whole residency, go to college, do all that down there. But at the time, through high school, I was a Grand Manger chef at a fine dining French restaurant, and CIA was in Napa Valley, the Culinary Institute of America. So I had a friend living in Santa Cruz, went out and visited her. She graduated the year before me.
How often do you have to clarify that, by the way? When you're like, I was trained at the CIA.
At the CIA a lot. Everyone at first is like, no.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, wait, it's food?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm coming back. So went to visit her, and I don't know if you know Santa Cruz or anything. It's right on the beach, and it also has the mountains.
Yeah.
And no buildings over 5 stories.
Yeah.
So minimal traffic, not huge hustle and bustle like San Diego would be.
Yeah.
And growing up in Vermont in the sticks, not a city person.
Yeah.
So moved there, started working at the Shadowbrook.
So you knew Santa Cruz before you picked it?
For about a week.
Okay.
Of young,
Yeah.
late teenage years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very briefly, but I knew I wanted to leave Vermont, and I figured that was going to be a better fit than going into a city atmosphere where wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. So then you had to be a resident, driver's license, all of that for 6 months before you get your residency to get local prices on colleges.
Yeah. Yeah.
By that time came around, and I applied for CIA. The chef I was working for at the time was like, you don't need to go waste your money and time up there. Like, you already know everything they're going to teach you. So why don't you just take a few side classes? And that's what I ended up actually doing, which I do and don't regret. There's definitely certain things in culinary school they teach you that.
Yeah, some of the fundamentals that you skipped way ahead.
Yeah, I went right and just got my professional chef license and took a bunch of sauce classes. But the part that I missed was the books and drawing up menus with food cost and inventory and how to get, Excel and be fluent on the computer side of the restaurant business. Yeah. The cooking side, got all that. And he was right. He's like, most of the kids through the years that have graduated from culinary school that would come on, they think they're next Anthony Bourdain and Gordon Ramsay, I'm going to be a TV chef.
Yeah.
And they don't know their nose from the tip of their toe.
Yeah.
When it actually comes to working a day in a restaurant.
Yeah.
They see the glamour side of it, not the
grind.
Roll up your sleeves. And hey, I think when I first moved out there, I didn't get home, I think it was 7 years before I went back home for Christmas.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was there for from 05 to 14.
Did you enjoy those periods of grind? Like when you were like, I know looking back, or like when you're at the end, you tend to remember that more than while you're in it. But was there during that 7-year period where you didn't go home, were you like, was it exciting to you? Like you enjoyed what you were doing?
Yeah. I at that time I did.
Yeah.
And because every day, I started, like I left the French restaurant as assistant sous chef and head grand manger.
Yeah.
So when the sous chef had his days off, I'd fill in, run the grill, run the, basically all the orders from the servers came right to me first, calling them out, all of that. At the restaurant in Santa Cruz, the Shadowbrook started just in the pantry. So cold salads and desserts.
Yeah.
About 10 days in, they're like, oh no, you need to go over here. And then I started working on the line, and it was just that progression up to where I came the full-time sous chef there and head butcher.
Yeah.
So every day coming in, first 4 hours was prepping fresh seafood, cutting all the steaks for the night, and then would clean up that and get on the line and do, anywhere from Monday through Thursday, a mellow night was like 250 covers.
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday would be pushing 350 to 500 covers.
Yeah.
And then like Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve, we would do probably 1,500. I mean, it's like I can't eat roasted turkey like Thanksgiving style anymore because of that.
Because you've done it so many times.
Literally, just 5 straight years of carving turkey on that scale just is like, no, I'm good. I'll take a rack of lamb or a Cornish game hen or something like that.
Yeah. It's funny, back when I used to, you've heard this story, sell rugs, I used to say whenever I get my first house one day, it's going to be wall-to-wall carpet because I never want to see an Oriental rug ever again. Once you flip some of those stacks all day, every day, it builds up. So I definitely empathize with what you're saying there.
And everyone's like, oh, you must cook some awesome food at home. And I'm like, dude, it's pizza and McDonald's.
Yeah.
Like, this is the last thing I want to do when I get home after a 12-hour shift of cooking for other people is cook for myself and then have to do the dishes.
Yeah.
I don't pay someone at home to do my dishes, unfortunately.
So that's true. Or set the table, or any of that stuff. Yeah. Have you met Nick? Have you ever talked to Nick? He's an apprentice in Charlotte.
No, I don't believe so.
So he was a chef as well. And I remember when I met him, I asked the question of, do you still like to cook for yourself? Because once it becomes, your pay, it's a job for somebody else that you're serving, right? It's like any trade. You go to the tradesman's house, and it's the worst. Yeah, it's the worst part of their home. Like,
it's so true. I told all winter, I'm like, I got to go service my oil furnace, and I still haven't touched it.
Haven't done it. Yeah.
Same thing. You walk into my parents' house, and there's like patches of work that my dad's a carpenter. Yeah, and it's it started, and then like almost right there, and then the next thing is started next to it. Yeah.
That's funny how it works that way. Okay, so sorry, interrupted you. So you did that 7 years, and then
about 7 years, and then moved to northern California to Chico.
Yeah.
Helped revamp a mom and pop breakfast restaurant. They wanted to open it up for dinner as well.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite funny that the name of that restaurant was called Mom's.
Oh, right.
And now I'm with Dad. Call Dad.
So you went from mom to dad?
Yeah. Was there from 14 until 2017 as the executive chef and assistant general manager.
Okay.
That was cool because Chico's kind of like Asheville, where like the beer scene was huge. So I started doing a lot of beer pairing dinners and stuff like that, working with the microbrews and then pairing food to go with the beer.
That's cool.
Which was a hard concept for me at first.
Yeah.
because when I drink beer, I want nachos and chicken wings.
Yeah.
Not gourmet food like in Santa Cruz, I would do a lot of wine pairings.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to pair wine to food than the beer to food.
But micro beer at that time was just on such a...
Yeah, we were right down the street from Sierra Nevada, the original Sierra Nevada.
Yeah.
The restaurant I worked for, we also owned the bar across the street, which we sold more Sierra Nevada beer than Sierra Nevada did at their own tap room. But it was the biggest bar on Chico State campus and the only one left that was allowed to be on campus.
Oh, okay.
Technically.
Yeah.
It was just like the last little corner block. And it's been that place has been a Chico tradition for many of years.
Yeah. So you left there in 17.
In 17, yep. My now wife, she graduated Chico State, so I met her, actually hired her as a server at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how restaurant life works. Your family is directly those people in the debauchery that happens inside of that.
Yeah. I've heard stories.
So we were dating for probably a year. She had graduated with her bachelor's in food science. She's now a registered dietitian for the state of North Carolina. But she was getting her master's degree, and it's a lottery program, so only select schools across the country offer the program, and they randomly pick people. So it doesn't matter if you were an A+ student, it's a complete random. Yeah. So she was on for about 3 months. When she put in her 5 schools that she would like, she was just a wreck. She's like, I'm not going to get picked. And the letter came, and Moorhead, Minnesota picked her. So we moved to Fargo, North Dakota.
I did not know. I knew the California side. I didn't know that you were up in Fargo.
Yeah.
Okay.
I keep that part hidden sometimes. And I usually, when I talk to people, I'm like, I did a stint in North Dakota, make it sound like a prison sentence.
Yeah.
The summers there are beautiful.
Hard time in Fargo.
The winters were terrible.
Yeah. And it's the majority of the year.
Yeah, solid 8 months for sure. The last winter that we were there was 60 days straight below -10.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the day that it broke, it was like 5 degrees, but there was just no wind.
Yeah.
Bright blue sky, and it literally felt like it was 80 degrees outside because the wind was not cutting through you. Yeah. So we were there for 2 years, and then in 2019, we moved to Asheville.
So were you a chef in Fargo as well? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was actually a cool adventure. I'd been watching this one restaurant like on was it Indeed, or they had Indeed and Craigslist ads and stuff like that, and it was called True Blue, but they had just opened or were in the process of opening.
Yeah.
All the other restaurants that I've worked at were established for 20 plus years, so all the equipment is used and abused, and this restaurant was just opening its doors. So my first day was spent actually peeling the plastic off refrigerators and seasoning the grill tops and stuff like that, and never had that feeling before. I was like, oh, pristine, just brand new kitchen, and it was high tech.
Yeah.
It was good. High-end steakhouse / like pub food.
Yeah.
And started there just as a basically saute chef, running seafood and pasta station pretty much. And
was it busy? Did it have the same cadence as
it did? The lunch, we were open lunch and dinner. The dinner side of it was definitely busy.
Yeah.
Poorly operated.
Yeah.
So it made it harder. Our
but
expo and wait staff none of them were seasoned servers. Everyone was kind of new. Same thing in the kitchen.
Well, they didn't have 20 years to figure out all the kinks.
Right, yeah. And where they did, so Lucky 13's was the don't want to say a chain. They are a chain, but one owner. It's not owned by a big corporation or anything like that. And it was like an Irish pub.
Yeah.
They excelled extremely well at that, but trying to do casual fine dining steakhouse, whole different animal. You need a whole different skill set.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, all the way down to like the silverware you need on the table is completely
just different game.
Yeah.
So you did that for 2 years, and then how'd you end up in Asheville?
Yeah. It was hard because they offered me partnership in the restaurant and to take it over as the executive chef. And my wife was like, I'm not staying. She goes, I'm graduating and I'm leaving 2 days after graduation. Yeah. Like, truck is pre-packed. Like, I am done here. Yeah. She wanted to go back to California. I was at that point over. I'm like, I've spent my time there. Yeah. Almost half of my life was.
It was like 15 years.
Yeah. And we were talking about maybe going back to Vermont to be closer to my family.
That's cool too.
Yeah. But for her, like, job opportunities are would be a lot harder for her to do all this work and then be struggling to try to find a job. So she actually wanted to get her PhD. So we were looking in the Chapel Hill, Raleigh area originally. I think UNC Chapel Hill is where she was looking at. So that's what kind of brought us here. And then I was just like, I'll cook wherever. Yeah. But then we looked at the coast. I'm not a beach guy. Yeah. I like lakes and rivers better. Yeah. But she loves the beach, and I'm like, baby, you love California beaches. There's no hurricanes, or you actually have to deal with some of those here. Yeah. And then we looked at the Charlotte. We actually looked here. Our friends of ours were living in Gastonia. Yeah. So we looked in this area, but it was at the time, too hustle and bustle for us too.
Although it would have been perfect. Have you ever heard the top 3 things to do in Charlotte? It's go to the beach in Charleston, go to the mountains in Asheville, and go shopping in Atlanta. So it would have been perfect.
It would have been perfect, yeah. All the way top things. Yeah, we had an extra day in that trip. Asheville wasn't even actually on our radar. Really. And then we're like, well, we have an extra day. We heard about all these great food places to go eat. We made the day trip out there, never went to any of those places. Yeah. But my wife was like, she's like, I could live here. Yeah. And that's kind of how it happened. Yeah.
When did you get to Asheville?
Oh, what was it? So we left Fargo like May 30th. Right. Very last few days of May, we left Fargo, drove straight here, put our stuff in a storage container, drove to JFK, and went to Europe for a month and a half.
Okay.
Is how
that was like your post.
That was her post. Like she's like, I've done X amount of years of school. Like I'm going on this European vacation thing. Yeah. So that was
2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we got back to Asheville mid-July.
Okay.
Is when we made it back to Asheville, yeah.
And then you decided you went back into
I did, so I found a restaurant in Black Mountain, Foothills Butcher Bar, so it was a whole animal butcher shop, and I was like, okay, I was looking for a different area in the culinary world. Yeah. And I was like, okay, the butcher side of things, like I could take a primal, like your tenderloin or your New York strip or your big chuck roast and cut that into the steaks that you get from that. Yeah. But from a whole animal standpoint, how to get each muscle from a 1,500-pound cow to the grill, I was like, I want to know more of that. Yeah. So I started doing that from basically started right at the end of July. Right before Christmas, took over as the special events and catering chef, which my wife and I had been talking about opening up our own catering department off and on.
Oh, yeah.
And doing just weddings and private events and stuff like that. Because I was getting sick of the day ins and day outs of the restaurant grind. You know, Bobby's attitude, Susie not showing up for work, the people at table 9.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Let me tell you, from my personal experience with a sister-in-law who has a wedding floral business, weddings and brides
is just as bad. Yeah.
Except instead of just dealing with that one table for a few hours, you got to deal with them for months.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So
I've worked with some very bad. What is it? Bridezillas.
Yes. Yeah, bridezillas.
Yeah. So that was about to happen, and then COVID.
Yeah.
Everybody got laid off except myself, the butcher shop manager, and one front of the house manager.
Yeah.
We were deemed essential by the town of Black Mountain, so we never technically closed
as a butcher
because we would the business motto behind Foothills was fresh, local, organic. Yeah. So all the beef, all the hogs, all the chickens came from local North Carolina farmers. No hormones, no additives into any of it. We sold local eggs, local dairy, cheeses. We made our own bologna and pastrami and cured meats.
Yeah.
So because of that, we always had a little storefront.
Yeah.
And they're like, you don't have to close. No one can come in and eat. You can stay, take out.
Yeah.
And we made the best smash burgers in that side of the area.
So that kept
it going. Through. And honestly, COVID was great for his business. We were trying to do 2 casual fine dining in that idea of butcher shop, being able to see the butcher shop while they're back there cutting the meat and while you're eating your lunch and stuff like that, so you can literally see where it came from to where it ended.
Yeah.
Awesome concept, but brick and mortar, that type of restaurant, you need 30 employees for 3 different shifts every single day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So financially, it's a nightmare.
All right. So COVID, you survived.
We survived.
One of the few in the food and bev out of the initial cut that probably made it through, right?
And it was a feat. It was every new policy, every new there's okay, how are we shifting, how are we pivoting? I could do different things with my restaurant, and so we had Black Mountain Restaurant and Butcher Shop, a food truck, 2 food trucks in Asheville, and a restaurant in Asheville. I could do certain things in Black Mountain that I couldn't do in Asheville, just because of the different town and local rules at that time. But went from being the special events and catering chef to only having to worry about, it was me and then the client.
Yeah.
Then I took over as the general manager, executive chef, line cook, front of the house manager, the whole thing, and we weren't slowing down and nobody wanted to work.
Yeah.
So that literally, even though I finally started getting paid, the restaurant business pays terrible.
Yeah.
Finally started getting paid a reasonable amount to where I'm like, okay, it's bearable.
Yeah.
Walked in one day and I actually had a day off. Nobody called me, nobody bothered me. I walked in Monday morning and nobody was even there yet, and I was just out of my mind mad.
Yeah.
And so I called the owner and I was like, we need to talk. And told him, you can offer me literally $1 million right now. I'm turning it down. I just can't. I'm done.
What drove you to that point?
Just already being burnt out of it, being told things would get better, we'll hire more people, but it just
never. And
not seeing it getting better for a while.
Yeah.
And, I have no problem working. I mean, I love working.
Yeah.
If I'm not working, sometimes I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
And that's just I hate that from my father. He instilled that in me.
I know nothing about what that's like. My wife has this, like, she calls it like my transition period. If we ever do like go somewhere with the kids, she knows that it's going to take me a few days before I can adjust. Out of I'm just anxious and not myself.
When we would go out to eat, when I was fully in the game still, my wife would make me sit with my back to the kitchen or the bar or the action, so that I'm not like paying attention. I gotta go do something. It's like, it's not even your restaurant. Sit down and enjoy it, you know. But it was just I was burnt out, and I saw it too much where other upper management or chefs get stuck in a rut, but they don't have an out. You know, they either financially they can't leave that job or don't know how. I just knew I had to make that decision right then. Just because of, you know, I was at the time 35. I was like, this is what I figured I was going to die behind the line of a kitchen, whether it's mine or partnered in one, you know, whatever.
So you weren't just quitting when you quit that. You weren't just quitting that specific restaurant.
I was done
with the culinary career path altogether.
The knives were getting hung up, so to speak. So I had a conversation with the manager. I gave him 3 months, and I said, just because of my messed up mentality in my head, I said, March 26th at 10 p.m. is my last day. I'm going to do 20, like in March 26th is my birthday. So I was like, I'm going to do 20 years in the restaurant business. And that was my little, like,
that was your,
fun little
I'm sure
thing.
you got a pension with that, right?
I think I got a cupcake.
That you had to make for yourself.
So I gave him, 3 months and was like, I will train whoever, I will do whatever. But basically in that conversation, I was like, I can't be here and be frustrated and let my attitude affect your business. I appreciated him too much in what he was doing there in his business to do that. And I hated that in other restaurants that I worked where I saw that from the upper management. Where it just gets toxic and just causes.
So it's weird because you say you appreciated him, but you were frustrated with him, right?
Yeah.
And that's always a weird balance to have, right?
It is. I don't want to say we could have worked through those issues, but it was just
like, you took issues to him in the
Okay. So he went from being like super hands-on, like too much owner hands-on in the day and days of the business, to at that time stepping away like almost too far when I kind of needed a little bit of a support.
Like, here you deal with it.
Which, I mean, I took it as like a compliment in a way that he was like, I trust you with my business. He had 2 rules: don't order any mayonnaise other than Duke's and no other ketchup other than Heinz. He said, I will fire you if you order anything different than that. And literally during COVID, there's like sometimes and I had Monarch mayonnaise on there and I think Hunt's ketchup. No more than 30 minutes after placing the order, he was like, called me and was like, what did I say? I'm like, there's no other mayonnaise. Like, we have to have it. But that was his like only stipulation. He's like, I trust you. You can do everything else, but this.
Such weird things to have.
Yeah. I mean, Duke's, I didn't understand it when I first moved here. It is awesome.
So my brother, he always talks about this hot dog place up in New Jersey where you can't get ketchup, right? And people in there all the time will ask for ketchup. And it's like New Jersey guys are like, hey Joey, this guy calls he calls his mustard ketchup. And then like the guy asks again and he goes, I'm not joking, you ask that again, you're out of here. And it's like they take their mustard that serious. It's kind of funny. Anyway, okay, so you're done with food and bev.
Done with it.
Everything.
Walked away from it. Took about a month off. Excuse me. Went up to Vermont, spent a week with the family. And when I came back, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? looked into a few, like I was like, okay, I know food. Be like a food rep, Cisco, Gordon's, any of that stuff. Just nothing like that was available in the Asheville area. So, and then I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, I know what I paid the guys to come fix our refrigerators.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of got.
So what popped that in your head, though?
I just like working.
You were just thinking through.
Yeah, just what I could do, like
those guys that had to fix fridges.
Yeah, I was just like, I mean, it's a good. I'm like, I'm like, it's a good career. Like, I knew what the checks I had to write them were, and there was only a couple of them in Asheville, and if you could get a hold of them, it was a miracle. And I was like, okay, that could be, or even I was thinking of like just restaurant equipment, in general.
Yeah.
Maybe being like a handyman for a restaurant, something like that, just to try to use what I knew from all the years in the business. Yeah.
Something that was tangible.
Yeah. So I actually filled out an application for the Postal Service. Decided not to go that route because my neighbor.
Good choice.
Yeah, my neighbor. I don't know. I might have been able to make it go faster. I don't know. Who knows? My neighbor at the time, he was leaving the restaurant business too, and he started as a postal worker. He loves it now.
Yeah.
But the first 3 years, you'd get
bad.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Even worse almost than he's like, it's almost worse than the restaurant business when it comes to like hours and being home with the family and stuff like that, especially at holiday times.
Yeah.
When the mail is
and you never know what you're going to get in that address.
Yeah. So I actually ended up working for Ingalls in Black Mountain. Their main distribution hub is there for all the Ingalls throughout North and South Carolina.
Yeah.
I
didn't realize that.
Yeah. I didn't know it either. It's a 1.5 mile long facility. Every Ingalls location, all the food comes from that one facility.
Okay.
So I was an order selector in the deep freezer. So I worked at an 8-hour plus shift I went right back to Fargo at -20.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that when the refrigeration concept popped in your head? When you were in the freezer?
It was a little bit more, because I was like, all right, this is a route. And Ingalls, they always talked about like internal growth.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys would, the coordinators or the supervisors and the assistant manager, all of them, they're like, I started as an order selector or a forklift operator, and now they're like tenured in Ingalls and not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's how those positions leave, is either they retire or die.
Yeah.
And that's how a new management position opens there.
Yeah.
And that they were ammonia based for the refrigeration there.
Yeah.
And all of that started like, okay, this could, the career is there. I was looking for a career where I was like, I got to find something I'm going to enjoy doing for the foreseeable future, because I don't have time to switch again. And did that for 6 months, and then I broke my ankle on the job there.
No kidding.
Yeah. Broke through a wooden pallet, completely detached one ligament, tore another ligament, and tore the tendon and chipped the bone pretty bad. So I had to have basically reconstructive surgery on my right ankle. After that, I was like, I'm done. That was just before we got married in 2022. We got married in June of 22. You were
able to walk and dance.
I scheduled the surgery I was about 4 days out of the boot.
Wow.
But I was still in like an ankle brace.
Yeah.
But I told the surgeon, I'm like, we are
getting married.
Yeah. I'm like, either I'm going to limp on it without surgery and we'll get the surgery done afterwards, or do we have time? Is this going to work? And she's like, follow your physical therapy and it should work.
Yeah.
So I did my best to follow physical therapy. But we were on our honeymoon in Thailand. And this is what really solidified the HVAC route. Is no matter where we went, beach bungalow, grabbing a beer, the hotel, the train station, anywhere, AC.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there and I was like, it's an international field. The concept is the same everywhere. It can literally only works one way. All you got to learn is the schematics and how to read them in the country that you are in. And no matter which way the climate goes, you'll always have a job because we got to cool you down or we got to heat you up.
Correct.
And that's really what solidified it. So then when we came back is when I started deep diving into apprenticeship programs and just local companies and seeing like what they were offering, if they would even take on a greenhorn or anything like that. I was still doing light duty work for Ingalls because I wasn't cleared for full duty work yet. And I enrolled at AB Tech into their academy. Was supposed to start that in August, and it was a 2.5-year associate's degree, and basically working, after the first semester you're EPA certified, and then you get your next level and your next level. And I enrolled in all that, got all the paperwork done and stuff like that, and then I was still constantly looking. I'm like, is there do I have to
There's got to be something somewhere.
Yeah. And I was like, not to play an old card, but I'm like, go back to a college. And
it's the same CIA thing that you went through earlier. Where it's do you go through the whole?
Yeah. And I was trying to think. I was like, okay, so I do get the certification, and then try to and there are night classes. I'm like, try to find a company to work during the day and then go to school at night and juggle that back and forth. And I was just scrolling through Indeed, and I saw the SOAR program. And I was like, wait a minute. Apprenticeship program, benefits paid right from day one and on the job, ongoing training and book work and training. And I was like, that's the route right there.
So you knew when you saw it that this is exactly what I would to be okay, I gotta pay money and try to juggle having to work and go to school with uncertainty.
And uncertainty is okay, and then looking at it was okay, this program's offering pay from day one. And the education and the brain fart. The experience was the biggest thing, because there's okay, you finish a 2.5 year program, you worked a little bit on that, all you got is a piece of paper.
Correct.
That says you theoretically know how to do this stuff.
But then your success would still depend on where you went and what company you ended up with and how they would handle you
from there. And with Sky and SOAR at the time, I was like, this is, at the end of the training, you still have built in 2.5 years of on the ground, in the attic, in the crawl space, hands-on experience, while getting the exact same certificates. On the training, on the educational side of it. But that hands-on field work was hey, this is the route to go.
How was the interview process for you? Did you do
it was
part
good.
Of the Super Day structure, or were you part of the more drawn out?
I was drawn out. So it was Mac was the first communication I had with, and then went and had a face-to-face with David, the Asheville location manager, and then with Matt Stewart. And it was, all of that was a little just odd to me, because I'm used to being on the other side of it, the one giving the interview, not having, conducting the interview, not going to one. And with, I guess with Mac was just over the phone, and that was
making sure you had a heartbeat. And
I was an actual person that lived, that was in the United States. But I was so nervous, phone conversation, no biggie. Doing a face-to-face, super easy. But when it came to the video conference call with Matt, I was like, I've nenever done a Skype interview before. Like, it was just a whole lot of different things all at once. And I was like, no matter how this goes, just make sure you ask him like these 3 questions at the end. Like, I wanted to be like giving him my own.
And part of the Teams or Skype or whatever you did at that time, we use Teams now, I think, it's to make sure that you have the willingness to figure something out.
So,
like, if you're not going to take the time, energy to figure out how to get on a video interview,
then what's the point? And that's what I was like at the time. I'm like, I got like a $50 Chromebook. I'm like, is this even going to be able to handle this? Internet, don't crap out on me now.
Come on. So did you know? So once you got in the program, did you know that you wanted to progress into leadership positions, or was it something that once you got your hands on the actual information, you were like, okay, I'm excited about this as a career opportunity? What were you looking for, a place with opportunities for growth, or was it more just the fact of what you talked about earlier, the fact that this trade goes anywhere and everywhere in the world?
I mean, both.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, like I said, transferring from one career for so many years where you thought that was your destiny, your path, to being like, okay, I need to find somewhere else where there's that growth, where there's that room. And with an apprenticeship, an in-house apprenticeship program and all of that, I was like, okay, they're investing, like, there's going to be growth there somehow, the opportunity somehow, some way. Did not go into it with like, I'm gonna have this happen so quickly. But I mean, I love, like, as soon as getting out there with Dwight and just turning the wrenches on stuff, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I got hooked. And like, I like that problem solving, where it's like every call, even though it just says no cooling or it's no heating, you're like, oh, okay, it's completely different from the next. So like, it's not the same monotonous thing day in and day out on it.
Correct. It's always a different venue too. It's not, is it table 7 or table 8 this time? It's
a whole different, and it's now, it's like Dwight, like, I'll be like, oh, I got to go to so-and-so's house, and he's like, oh yeah, the condenser is down around and over here and up, and I'm like, how do you remember that? But now I'm getting phone calls, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, you just remember it. It's funny. But every location, every house, every call is completely different, and that's part of the fun factor in there.
Did you have any inclination that you were progressing through the program as well as we realized you were? Like, did you feel confident in the information that you were retaining and your ability to apply that knowledge?
More so going into the second round of classwork. Honestly, the first round of classwork, having to go back through like basic algebra again, was like, no, not fractions again, I left you behind. Some of that stuff definitely, I felt I was behind on some of the classes, just being out of school for so long, and just with it being completely different material and stuff like that. But then after, we got done end of September was the end of my first classwork. Did 2 weeks of ride-alongs, and then was in my own van running maintenances, and then shortly after that was on full rotation on calls and
just getting after it.
Just getting right after it. So I started building that confidence and stuff like that, and then then kind of going into the second class, definitely felt that edge when things were like especially the way Katie runs the class with the Kahoots questions and just making it fun and stuff like that, was like, oh wait, like, okay, I don't want to be that like know-it-all that's always like answering the questions and not letting anyone else chime in. So it'd be like, okay, I'm going to answer it. I'm going to give you time, but yeah. But also just like David and the company in general, just being upfront with your progression and showing you your numbers and stuff like that, where he's like, hey, like, these are your numbers. Here's a seasoned technician's numbers. Yeah. You're right there, or you're past them on some things. Yeah. And I think just being new and just taking that extra time and having not having to rework something that I was trained from a different company or something like that, can go through our processes the right way. You know, the first time was able to get more of those maintenances signed up or get those reviews and stuff like that, where, you know, some seasoned guys are like, too good for this maintenance or something like that. I'm just going to go over here and smoke a cigarette or something like that.
So you're in between 3 and 4, correct? Level? Are you done? Or are you 2?
Technically, our 3rd got pushed back.
That's
we were supposed to be in March.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're between 2 and 3, and then David came to you, what, 2 weeks ago now?
3
weeks ago?
Yeah. Well, it kind of started almost around Christmas. There was a possible opportunity to move to Charlotte.
Yeah.
To help out here.
Yeah.
But then, about 2-3 weeks ago, David presented me with, a possibility of Hickory supervisor position was possibly on the table. And when I had the next day off after that, and then was going to be like, I'm ready for the challenge. Like, I'm going to take it. And then he was like, no, you're not. That's not an option anymore, but you get to stay here if you want. And that's kind of was like, oh, wait. I'm like, what about Dwight? Yeah. And they're like, Dwight took a different position, and we have a different route for his knowledge and stuff like that. So I was not expecting that. That was for sure.
Yeah. If you had to give one piece of advice so May 13th, Class 6 started. Mm-hmm. If you had to give one piece of advice to those that just got into class, or those that are still relatively green in the field out of Class 5, what would you say to them? What would be your point of advice for how obviously you went through different times. You know, there was no Travis above you, right? Right. There was.
Yeah, we were the very first.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So, what would you say to those individuals?
It would be, and I don't want it to be the cliche thing, but it's what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it 110%.
Yeah.
I gave it my all. Would finish the 8 hours of class training and go home and search YouTube and watch or read blogs from AC Service Tech or Greg Migliaccio. I know I just butchered his name, but and just would continue that. And my wife honestly was like, "Can you just pause for a minute?"
Yeah,
and I was like, "No, I can't." Would get on a service call, and it would take me forever to figure it out. I would go home to better myself so next time that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's just 100%. You put in that effort. You put in that extra bit. Your teammates are going to see it. Your managers are going to see it. Everybody above them are going to see it. So it's definitely your hard work and dedication doesn't go miss. But you got to be willing to sacrifice a few more of those home hours, or being frustrated with yourself and feeling like you don't know what you're doing in the middle of a service call. But if you instantly just dial the phone and call that senior tech every single time to get the answer, you're not doing yourself any justice in growing.
Correct.
But you just gotta be confident.
Sometimes you have to remove the crutch.
Yeah.
To move.
You gotta rip that Band-Aid off and like I'm not going to call. And I mean that's what I'd be on for 3 hours before I would call.
Yeah.
And Dwight and David were like,
you gotta
call a little bit sooner than that.
Yeah.
But like, don't walk onto it and just be like, okay, it's been 10 minutes. I don't know. Pick up the phone.
Call.
You got to be willing to.
And you haven't even gone through your progression at that point.
Right. Yeah. You got to be willing though to fail and pick yourself back up and just know that you learned.
Yeah. And
the next time, you're gonna know.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to know not to put your elbow on top of that capacitor while it's plugged in and running because it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. But it's just 100% putting in that dedication.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like, I know you put in a lot more hours, right? But it doesn't have to be a lot. Like, it can be just a little extra effort.
It's just that little.
Every day.
It's that little bit. It's, just doing that little bit in the shop.
Yeah.
Sweeping the floor without the manager having to ask you. I mean, just minute little things like that, just being open to doing things and not holding yourself back because you might not know or be competent or confident in yourself to do that task.
Yeah.
First time changing a breaker.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a weird mentality, and it can come across as negative, so I hope it doesn't read this way. But there is a stark difference between the mentality that you just articulated, right? Of, I know that ultimately me learning this trade is on me, right? We're going to facilitate the opportunity, but still you have to put in the effort and the energy to, outperform.
Yeah.
Right? And there's almost sometimes the sentiment that we're going to come out and actually hold your hand while you do it. And that's not, like, yes, in certain circumstances, it's absolutely going to happen. Like, maybe your first refrigeration repair, certain things will be a lot more hands-on than others. And the reality is, if you don't learn how to navigate this, you're never going to be a successful tech, because there are guys who do this for 50 years and still go out in the field and see something that they've never seen before. So It's just like and they're not taking 10 minutes and calling somebody and saying now.
Yeah, they're like, wait, I don't know who to call.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even with like the A2L refrigerants, just all the new changes every year, a different federal law changes or a new system comes out, like it's ever changing.
Yeah.
You think you got it, and then they throw in a new type of inverter.
Well, look, I think that's incredible advice, so I appreciate your willingness to share that. And I think it's evident in the success that you're having, and you and Matt down in Columbia being the first to be promoted out of Dad U speaks volumes, not only to the success of the program, but to the opportunity that other people have coming through that program. And it's only going to get better and better. So what I would say, if you're out there listening to this and you have aspirations of continuing to grow within the organization or grow within your career, if you're okay with this, Mr. Travis, I would say pick up the phone, call Travis. Ask him what his mentality was. Ask him how he approached it. Because just your attitude, your willingness to step up, that's everything in this career, and that's everything for seizing opportunities in the future. So I, again, appreciate you willing to share that.
Yeah.
One thing I gotta hear from you, because I've got my kids now are really into this, which I don't know if you know what I'm going to talk about, but this, is it Bear Poacher Ranger or Ranger Poacher Bear?
Ranger Poacher Bear.
All right.
So that's the new and improved mountain version of rock, paper, scissors.
So where did you learn this?
Oh, where? Back in Vermont.
Was it Vermont?
Yeah.
So you've known this for a while. I've never heard of this.
Yep. It got lost for a while. I brought it back, and then I was just trying to make that fun. And that was one of my last installs with that coworker, and he'd never like,
never
what
done
are you talking about? The homeowner's like, wait, Ranger Poacher, what are you talking about?
So I do it with my son all the time now, and it's so bear kills ranger.
Yeah.
Ranger catches poacher, and poacher kills bear.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
It's just the same as rock, paper,
scissors.
Same
as rock, paper, scissors.
Except for you stand back to back.
Bear, ranger, poacher, and you go back to back, and you just say, you don't have to worry about are we go on 3, or is it 1? Like, it's just ranger, poacher, bear, and you spin and turn. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for that.
Yeah.
My family and I have had a ton of fun with that.
I'm glad.
I would have
That's
never
awesome.
known that ever existed if you didn't do that. So that's really awesome. If you all don't know what we're talking about, Travis did. Who was it with? Ed. Yeah, you and Ed did a video of Ranger Poacher Bear.
Yeah, for who got to install the indoor unit and who got the harder outdoor. Ed did.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. I let him. It was his first time.
Yeah, I was gonna say yeah. You've got like the ankle view down of what's coming.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I appreciate you taking the time to come to Charlotte to sit down with me. I hear about you all the time. These guys are so proud of what you've accomplished. Everybody from, Katie to David to Derek to Matt. So congratulations to you, and thank you for everything you're doing. You have an incredible future ahead of you. So thank you for stepping up and taking a leadership role, and I'm excited to see where you go from here. So
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Couldn't have done it without you.
Yeah, appreciate it.